Hello friends. In the last lecture, we discussed about the accounting treatment of reserves and accumulated profits and losses. In that discussion, I told you an example of two partners and their friend Z, who is a chartered accountant. The friend gave a suggestion that before the change in profit sharing ratio, whatever you have earned, distribute in the old ratio. Right? So that means all the reserves that have been created out of the profits or any accumulated profits or losses that are appearing in the balance sheet, right, they should be transferred to the partners capital accounts to avoid any conflict in the future. That was a very logical suggestion by their friend Z, a chartered accountant, that whatever you have earned before the change in profit sharing ratio, distribute it in the old ratio. Clear? Now, in that discussion, I also told you about the various reserves. Like, there was workmen compensation reserve, investment fluctuation reserve. Right? In this lecture, we are going to discuss in detail about one of the reserves, that is workmen compensation reserve. We are going to discuss about workmen compensation reserve. Now, what is this reserve created for? The first question is, what is this reserve created for? See, if you are running a business, it is very important to take care of your workers. Right? Without your workers, you are like a handicapped businessman. You can't do anything. Right? In the chapter of goodwill also, while discussing the factors affecting goodwill, there was a point that it is very important to have a good coordination with your workers. Right? So it is very important that you take care of your workers. Right? The workers are the integral part of any business. Without workers, you are like a handicapped businessman. Integral part of any business. Right? Now, why this workman compensation reserve is created? This is created that in case there is any casualty with the worker, right? In case of any casualty with the worker, like a worker who is working on a machine, his life is always at a risk, right? He is working on a big machine, his finger got cut. Now it is the onus on the company to compensate him for the loss. Right? It is the responsibility of a company to take care of the employees, and in case of any casualty, the onus is on the company to compensate that employee or his or her family for the loss. Right? They should compensate him or her for the medical expenses. Right? For that, most of the companies create workmen compensation reserve. They set aside some amount of the profits as workmen compensation reserve, so that in case of a casualty, this compensation can be paid through workmen compensation reserve. Right? So, why this reserve is created? This reserve is created to meet any casualties arising to workers during work. Right? There was a worker who is working in my factory. He was working on a machine and suddenly his finger got cut. Then it is my responsibility that I should pay his medical expenses, I should get his treatment done, right? I should compensate him for the loss. For that purpose, the workman compensation reserve is created so that at the time of casualty, the amount can be paid from this workman compensation reserve. Some profits are set aside as workman compensation reserve to meet any casualties arising to workers during work. Clear? This is the basic purpose of creating workman compensation reserve. Clear? Now, what is the accounting treatment of this workman compensation reserve? We have to discuss the accounting treatment. Now, as we have discussed, as per the suggestion of friend Z, all the reserves, whatever you have earned, right, reserves is nothing but a part of profit only set aside. So he said whatever you have earned before the change in profit sharing ratio, right, divide it in the old ratio. So according to that logic, this workman compensation reserve will be distributed among partners. Workman compensation reserve account debit to partners capital account, right, as per the suggestion of friend Z, who said whatever you have earned, whatever the reserves you have created, distribute it in old ratio. Do not show it in the balance sheet. Clear? Before the change in profit sharing ratio, distribute everything. Clear? So this workman compensation reserve will be transferred to partners capital accounts. Now there are a few cases relating to this. Now case 1 is, we'll discuss case 1. So case 1 is no claim on workman compensation. What it means, that during the year there is no casualty at all. There is, you have created a workman compensation reserve, but there is no casualty. So what will you do is, workman, whatever the reserve is there, compensation reserve account debit to partners capital accounts. The whole of reserve will be distributed among partners. Simple. You created a reserve of 90,000 rupees. There was no casualty at all, right? So your reserve is still 90,000. So that 90,000 you will distribute among partners. Clear? Now second case we have is the claim amount is less than workman compensation reserve. You have created a workman compensation reserve of 90,000. There is a casualty during the year, right? For that the claim amount is 45,000. Now what will be the entry? You have created a reserve of 90,000. During the year there is a casualty to one of your workers. For that the claim amount on workman compensation is 45,000. There is an expense of 45,000 on that worker's loss. Now the entry will be workman compensation reserve account debit to provision for workman compensation to partners capital account. What is workman compensation reserve? 90,000. The amount of claim that has been submitted will be transferred to provision for compensation account, and rest, whatever the reserves are left with us, they will be transferred to partners capital accounts. This is claim amount, right? This is balance amount of reserve. Clear? When the claim amount is less than the workman compensation reserve. Now we have the third case where claim amount is equal to workman compensation reserve. You have created a workman compensation reserve of 90,000. There is a casualty during the year to one of the workers and the expense on that is 90,000. That is, the claim on workman compensation is 90,000. Now what will be the entry? The entry will be workman compensation reserve account debit to claim amount will be transferred to provision for workman compensation. 90,000 and 90,000. Clear? So when the claim amount is equal to the workman compensation reserve, the whole of the reserve will be transferred to provision for workman compensation and no reserve is left for distribution among partners. Clear? Now next point. Last case is if the claim amount is more than workman compensation reserve. Workman compensation reserve of 90,000, you have a claim amount of 90,000. During the year there is a casualty, the expense on that casualty is 99,000, whereas you have created a reserve of 9,000. Now 90,000, sorry, now 9,000 you will have to pay extra out of the business profits. The entry will be workman compensation reserve account debit, revaluation account debit, to partners capital accounts. Clear? Sorry, not partners capital accounts, to provision for, this should be not partners capital account because there is no reserve to be distributed. This is a reserve that there is a claim on it, so it will transfer to provision for workman compensation account. So this is 90,000 the reserve we have and the claim is for 99,000. 9,000 we will transfer to revaluation account. That means we are revaluing our estimate, we are revaluing our workman compensation reserve, right? It is basically a loss. Okay, so this revaluation we will transfer to partners capital accounts. The second entry will be partners capital account debit to revaluation account. Why the partners capital accounts will be debited? Because to the extent of this revaluation, this 9,000 we will be paying out of the current profits. right? To the extent of this 9,000, the partners will get 9,000 profits less. So we will debit the partners capital accounts and we will credit the revaluation account, right? This is a case where the claim on workmen compensation is more than workmen compensation reserve already created. Clear? So this is all about workmen compensation reserve, right? It is created to meet any casualties arising to workers during the work, and in case of no claim on workmen compensation, the whole workmen compensation reserve will be transferred to partners capital account. In case the claim amount is less than workmen compensation reserve, then to the extent of claim amount, it will be transferred to provision for workmen compensation account, and the rest, the reserves which are left after the claim, they will be transferred to partners capital accounts. So these are the 4 cases relating to workmen compensation reserve. How we have to do the accounting treatment for workmen compensation reserve. Clear? In the next lecture, we will discuss about investment fluctuation reserve. Right?